Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us just how devastating a global cross-border threat can be. Climate change and biodiversity loss are no different. In fact, they pose an even greater existential threat, to the extent that we have to put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing. Having myself had the opportunity of consulting many of you over these past 18 months, I know you all carry a heavy burden on your shoulders, and you do not need me to tell you that the eyes and hopes of the world are upon you. To act with all dispatch and decisively, because time has quite literally run out. We also know that countries, many of whom are burdened by growing levels of debt, simply cannot afford to go green. Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders. It offers the only real prospect of achieving fundamental economic transition.
Do you know how much the Queen is worth? 17 trillion pounds. That's $30 trillion. She could end world poverty tomorrow. Instead, she just sits in her ivory tower and laughs at us. This is coming to an end.
$30 trillion? Of the billions of families on planet Earth, how did this one family manage to collect and hoard most of the world's wealth over the centuries? Besides insider trading and tax-free income, the answer is the slave trade and drug trade. The Queen is the wealthiest person on Earth. Her gold carriage alone is made of 4 tons of solid gold, worth over $370 billion at today's gold prices. Until 1992, the Queen's income was all tax-free. In 1977, the Bank of England Nominees Limited was established to hide the Queen's investments. Secrecy about her wealth protects her from a public lynching. Government and banking officials inform the Queen about where to invest her wealth. That's called insider trading, and it's illegal. But the Queen gets away with it scot-free. Why? Because she's the Queen, and she's immune to prosecution. The Queen owns more than 300 residences, including castles and palaces, crown jewels, over 27,000 masterpieces, prize racehorses, and a fleet of Bentleys and Rolls-Royces. Her colossal wealth also includes crown land and investments that she inherited from her black nobility ancestors. The Queen's Crown Estate includes over 50% of the UK's coastline, as well as Regent Street and Windsor Great Park. Her trillions in wealth are passed down to her descendants, untaxed.
In succeeding Her Majesty as head of the Commonwealth, I draw great strength from her example, together with all that I have learnt from the extraordinary people I have met throughout the Commonwealth over so many years. The Commonwealth has been a constant in my own life, and yet its diversity continues to amaze and inspire me.
He then gets on to talking about a more durable future, where nature and prosperity can work together. And what he's really talking about is renewable energy and a reduction in CO2 emissions. And of course, we know the King himself has called carbon dioxide a pollutant. So goodness knows where he gets that from, as market gardeners pump it into their greenhouses to make the tomatoes grow.
CO2 is warming the planet. And the equation on CO2 is actually a very straightforward one. If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. The effects on the weather, perhaps worse, the indirect effects in that the natural ecosystems can't adjust to these rapid changes, and so you get ecosystem collapses. Now, the exact amount of how you map from a certain increase in of CO2 to what temperature will be and where the positive feedbacks are, there's some uncertainty there, but not very much. And there's certainly uncertainty about how bad those effects will be, but they will be extremely bad.
So, what do we do? Without doubt, we must now put ourselves on a warlike footing, approaching our action from the perspective of a military-style campaign. That way, working together, we can combat this most grave and urgent challenge. If we have the resolve to shift our trajectory, we must start now by bringing forward our net zero target. I'm afraid 2050 simply suggests we have room to delay.
I asked the top scientists on this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero.
When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
Basically, there's a lot of people thinking about it, and working on it. I am, and we just got to keep with it. We can't really afford to lose this one. And it's not just climate change. Climate change is a symptom of overpopulation and too many people using too much stuff. What we have to do is we've got to stabilize the population, and quickly, because we can't handle 9 billion people.
This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. I think an epidemic, either naturally caused or intentionally caused, is the most likely thing to cause, say, 10 million excess deaths.
We have the means right now, very effective vaccines.
In some ways, the bioterror thing scares me the most.
Are there any CEOs or business leaders today that you admire?
Yeah. I like Warren Buffett, and I like Bill Gates. I like the winners.
It's a government thing to decide, okay, this is a problem. How do you move resources around? How do you allocate the scarce supplies?
We're going to have to get our government to work better, and because then they have to be able to do more than one thing at a time. I mean, I ran CNN and the Cartoon Network at the same time.
The Illuminati's plan for world domination. All laid out. You were right.
Of course I was! It was only a matter of time. We cannot hide from the Master Detective forever. I am Lumino, head of the Illuminati!
Save it, Triangle Man. We came here for answers.
I suppose there's no harm in walking you through our plan for world domination. We did work hard on it. It all starts here, with the banks.
This pyramid and all-seeing eyes frickin' everywhere. I'm not going to go through them all because, of time, but every one of the shots that you're going to see has got that in it. Look at them. All over the bloody place. And this is feeding something into the subconscious of those who watch, overwhelmingly kids. The programming starts subconsciously from the earliest age.
Conspiracy cover-up! Illuminati laser! Conspiracy grind!
We're going to have to get our government to work better, and because then they have to be able to do more than one thing at a time. I mean, I ran CNN and the Cartoon Network at the same time, and we have to multitask.
And when an epidemic hits, governments having been prepared in advance and going through simulations, that will help them make the decisions that are only in their hands.
We just got to keep with it. We can't really afford to lose this one. And it's not just climate change. Climate change is a symptom of overpopulation and too many people using too much stuff. What we have to do is we've got to stabilize the population and quickly, because we can't handle 9 billion people.
Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal, far beyond global GDP, and with the greatest respect, beyond even the governments of the world's leaders.
Governments having been prepared in advance and going through simulations, that will help them make the decisions that are only in their hands.
So in 1998, you founded the UN Foundation with an historic $1 billion donation. What motivated you to make this donation, and why the United Nations?
The UN was in a lot of trouble. They were in financial trouble. And this was back before governments bailed out companies. This was a time when companies and individuals bailed out governments.
The United Nations headquarters, which was built in 1945 and financed largely by John D. Rockefeller.
Ted, what do you think America's place in the New World Order should be? It's always been seen as the global policeman. But as you said before, it's hard to see with all these military conflicts where the winner and loser lies. What should America be doing?
I think the global policeman should be the United Nations.
It's worldwide military power. He tips his helmet to the elite, who are climbing out from underground cities where they safely hid from the apocalypse.
A network of tunnels under cities. And you can, when I say, I don't mean a 2D plane of tunnels, I mean tunnels that go many levels deep.
Conspiracy cover-up!
Mr. Speaker, that member was promoting open disinformation. That's not debate. We have to call out disinformation.
We'll get into debate again.
We've got to stabilize the population. When I was born, there were
so what's wrong with the population? I mean,
with too many people. That's why we have global warming. We have global warming because too many people are using too much stuff.
But
if there were less people, they'd be using less stuff.
I think there's now a feeling developing where the young people feel our elders
solve issues on our back. And we have a very short time to take action. And I think there will be tremendous pressure from the young generation in the future to address those issues. We at the World Economic Forum, we are very much involved by giving the young people a voice, by working together with the UN.
It is the policy of the United Nations not to negotiate with terrorists.
Really? So long.
A strategic partnership between the UN and the World Economic Forum, which outlines areas of cooperation to deepen engagement between the two institutions and to jointly accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda.
Here we need a vast military-style campaign to marshal the strength of the global private sector, with trillions at its disposal.
Foro político de alto nivel sobre desarrollo sostenible. Es el mejor mecanismo creado por Naciones Unidas, ¿no?, para dar seguimiento y evaluar los avances en el cumplimiento de los objetivos del desarrollo sostenible. Recordamos cómo en el año 2015 la comunidad internacional suscribió los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible que, junto con el acuerdo de financiación y el acuerdo de París de lucha contra el cambio climático, forman la Agenda 2030. Esta es la hoja de ruta que debería cumplir la comunidad internacional para alcanzar el desarrollo sostenible en todos los países del mundo para dicha fecha.
The future has not been written. There is no fate but what we make for ourselves. I wish I could believe that.
You know, we partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. You know, we own the science, and we think that the world, you know, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do. But again, it's a huge challenge that I think all sectors of society need to be very active in.